and it has to be reformed. And I think everybody agrees that the current system is not working. The Employment Rights Bill, this is all about ensuring that work pays and people are supported into work.
While millions of Britons struggle to find affordable housing, Rachel Reeves offers what critics call a glorified wish list instead of actual solutions. No concrete funding plan, no specified land allocation, no realistic timeline for construction. Imagine building a house with just a sketch on a napkin. That's essentially what Labour's economic chancellor is doing with Britain's future. Today we're breaking down why Reeves's supposed housing revolution might actually make the crisis worse, not better. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. Britain's economy teeters on the edge of catastrophe, with the housing crisis reaching unprecedented depths. Average house prices have soared to nearly 9 times the typical annual salary.
So how can you have such confidence in this going to work versus past reforms?
Well, I'm absolutely confident that the system we inherited is not working. Not working in terms of ensuring we've got a decent participation rate in the economy.
Forcing millions into cramped rentals or back to their parents' homes well into their 30s. This isn't just discomfort, it's a generational theft that's strangling economic mobility and destroying the British dream of home ownership. Against this bleak backdrop enters Rachel Reeves, wielding promises that sound magnificent on paper but crumble under the slightest scrutiny. Her grand vision includes building 1.5 million new homes, a number that would indeed help address the housing shortage if it weren't floating in a vacuum of practical implementation. The Institute for Fiscal Studies has raised serious questions about the £16 billion in additional spending Reeves has proposed, pointing out glaring mathematical inconsistencies that suggest either magical thinking or deliberate obfuscation.
And it has to be reformed, and I think everybody agrees that the current system is not working. The Employment Rights Bill, this is all about ensuring that work pays and people are supported into work.
When pressed during her recent interview on where exactly these homes would be built, Reeves offered vague reassurances about working with local authorities without addressing the fundamental constraints of planning permission, land availability, or construction capacity. Britain already faces a critical shortage of skilled construction workers, a problem that's worsened since Brexit. Yet Reeves's plan assumes these workers will materialise from thin air to build her promised housing utopia. The math simply doesn't add up. To achieve 1.5 million new homes within a single parliamentary term would require constructing approximately 300,000 homes annually, a figure the UK hasn't managed in decades. The necessary infrastructure investment alone would far exceed the ambiguous funding mechanisms Reeves has outlined.
There is plenty of evidence from past programmes that we can do more to support people into work. You look at the international evidence, this is not the only thing we are doing. This £1 billion back to work package is just one of a number of measures we're doing to help people.
Former Treasury economists have called her proposals fundamentally detached from fiscal reality, highlighting that her projected revenue streams rely on growth assumptions that even the most optimistic market analysts consider fantasy. Perhaps most troubling is Reeves's dismissal of legitimate questions about implementation as mere negative thinking. When challenged to explain how her housing revolution would navigate Britain's notoriously restrictive planning laws, she deflected with rehearsed talking points about bold vision and progressive solutions. This isn't leadership, it's political theatre performed at the expense of desperate homebuyers and renters who need real solutions. The housing crisis demands serious, meticulous planning, not grand pronouncements. Economists across the political spectrum, from former Conservative advisor Patrick Minford to progressive think tank Resolution Foundation, have condemned these proposals as half-baked schemes that lack essential funding mechanisms and implementation details. They warn that creating false expectations could actually worsen market conditions by encouraging speculative behaviour while failing to deliver actual housing stock. Reeves's housing plan isn't merely impractical, it's potentially catastrophic. Behind the promise of new homes lies a £16 billion £8 spending proposal at a time when economic growth forecasts have been slashed from 2% to just 1%. This isn't just poor planning, it's an economic time bomb wrapped in political rhetoric. The fundamental problem isn't just what Reeves proposes, but what she ignores. Land hoarding by developers continues unchecked, creating artificial scarcity that drives prices skyward. Meanwhile, soaring rents consume ever larger portions of workers' wages, trapping millions in a cycle of housing insecurity. Yet Reeves's plan addresses none of these root causes.
But when those reassessments happen, we want those reassessments to be done much more face-to-face. Before the pandemic, 7 in 10 people had a PIP assessment into work. The conversation we've already had around apprenticeships, the increase in the national minimum wage and the national living wage.
Instead focusing solely on construction numbers that exist in a mathematical fantasy rather than economic reality. We've seen this movie before. Previous governments have announced grand housing initiatives that crumbled under the weight of practical challenges. Remember Cameron's 2015 promise to build 200,000 starter homes? Not a single one materialised. Or May's pledge to fix the broken housing market. House prices continued their relentless climb. These failures weren't accidents. They were inevitable consequences of plans that ignored fundamental market dynamics and implementation logistics. The most glaring contradiction in Reeves's proposal is the complete disregard for the construction industry's labour crisis. You simply cannot manifest skilled builders, plumbers, electricians and architects through political willpower. The current shortage represents years of underinvestment in training and apprenticeships, exacerbated by demographic shifts and policy failures. Without addressing this fundamental labour gap, Reeves's housing targets aren't just ambitious, they're mathematically impossible. True housing reform would require comprehensive changes to planning laws, land banking penalties, rent stabilisation measures, and massive investment in construction training. It would mean tackling the financialisation of housing that has transformed homes from places to live into investment vehicles. It would require coordination between national and local governments, industry stakeholders, and communities. None of these complex solutions appear in Reeves's simplistic pronouncements. The economic consequences of implementing such a half-baked plan could be severe. Increased government borrowing without productivity improvements would likely trigger higher interest rates, further straining mortgage holders already struggling with payments. Resources diverted to unattainable housing targets would create market distortions while failing to deliver actual homes. Perhaps most dangerously, creating false expectations could trigger speculative behaviour that further inflates the housing bubble while helping nobody actually secure affordable housing. Let's be brutally honest here. What Britain needs isn't more empty promises dressed up as economic brilliance. It's a genuine reckoning with reality. Effective reform demands acknowledging fiscal truths and implementing comprehensive changes across multiple sectors. The housing crisis cannot be solved through political theatre. It requires addressing fundamental issues like land hoarding and unaffordable rents. The current approach championed by Reeves lacks substance where it matters most. We need a welfare system that genuinely incentivises work while remaining sustainable long-term. As taxpayers and citizens, we deserve more than political sleight of hand. We deserve economic plans that can withstand scrutiny and deliver actual results, not just appealing soundbites.